How can we help your son improve his Gemara skills without spending a fortune on a tutor? Welcome to the Jewish News Channel. Let me describe what it's like for your 6th, 7th, or 8th grade son sitting in Gemara class. Imagine if somebody wanted to see how good a driver you are. So they put you in this fancy sports car, they put you in a garage, they tell you you're going to drive all around the garage, and they're going to see what type of driver you are. You get in the garage, and it's pitch black. You cannot see a thing. You drive around, you bump into things, you smash the car up, you bump into those bumps that they have in parking garages, I don't know what those things are called, and you bump into the walls and total the car. And they say to you, oh wow, you must be a terrible driver. And you say, terrible driver? I'm a great driver. I'm amazing. I'm Dale Earnhardt. But it was pitch black. I couldn't see a thing. That's what it's like for your son, at least for most kids, sitting in front of a piece of Gemara. They're simply in the dark. They just can't make heads or tails. The Gemara is in a language that they don't really understand. There are no nakudas, there's no punctuation, and they're thrashing around. They just can't make heads or tails of it. And it's impossible to judge a kid's kishron, a kid's potential in Gemara, based on what they do at that age, or at least it's really difficult, because they're blind. They're in the dark. So we don't know how good a driver they are because they can't see anything to begin with. There's only once a kid can really read a piece of Gemara and understand the basics of what's going on, have the basic fundamental skills, that we could start to judge them. Now, I know that it's really hard for a Rebbe, and maybe it's not even possible for a Rebbe in a yeshiva to be able to teach all the skills over to kids, at least for most Rebbeim. Maybe it's not even possible to be done in a group setting. I'm not here to judge. I'm not here to blame anybody or point any fingers. I don't think anybody can know if we're doing enough to teach our kids the skills and fundamentals, because if a kid doesn't pick it up, the Rebbe could say, look, I've done everything I can, but the kid just isn't picking it up. And we could say back, well, maybe not. Maybe there are other things that can be done. So how do you ever judge that? And I get that. And look, to sit there, it's really boring. It is not fun. If you teach a kid typed words and you just teach a kid how to read a piece of Gemara and just go through the technical stuff all day long, that's not nearly as fun as getting up and telling stories about Beryl and Shmerel. And look, there has to be some kind of balance, but I get it. But maybe we can be doing more to give our kids over the fundamental skills ourselves, maybe as parents. I have a couple of suggestions. I mean, think about sports, right? Where does the real hatzlacha, the real success come from in sports, in baseball? Hitting home runs, making these exciting diving catches, those are fun. That's great. That's not where it really comes from. First, you have to get the fundamentals. You have to feel the routine grounders. You have to be able to make contact with the ball. And these baseball players, they go through these drills, these hours of tedious drills for weeks at a time, fielding ground balls, routine ground balls over and over again, making contact with the ball. Sitting in the batting cage, not hitting home runs, but just making contact 50 times, 100 times, 150 times a day. And that's where the hatzlacha comes from, at least at the formative stages, picking up the fundamental skills. So how can we do that? That's the tedious stuff, the stuff that's not fun. That's where a lot of the success comes from. So I have two suggestions that I think you get a lot of mileage. We can not invest a ton of time and yet get a lot of mileage and teach our kids the fundamental skills. One of them is this, the Gemara card. Great, very convenient. I happen to have it right here. The Gemara card, put out by Termasar. I don't make a dime off of this, by the way, and it's a really, really incredible resource for teaching kids. I don't mean you should just give it to your kid and let them work with it, although you could do that, but I think you could do even more. There are many different parts of this, which has a lot of different facts and information that can help you learn a Gemara. But one of the main things is the glossary, where they put together hundreds of words that appear very often in the Gemara. And you can drill your kids, teach your kids. You don't have to do them all, but pick out the words that are really the most important, that come up again and again, and make it into a contest, make it exciting. Give your kids 10 words a week and tell them to memorize those 10 a week. You'll test them and you give them some kind of prize. Then you can do 10 the next week, 10 the next week. Then you can review. And before you know it, your child can know hundreds of words of Gemara, words that come up again and again. So now instead of the kid looking at the Gemara and being lost and in the dark, they actually will know a large chunk of the words, and they'll come up again and again. And as they learn the sugya, they won't be lost. Now, once they do that, it increases exponentially, because then they learn the Gemara, they really know a lot of what's going on, and then the next Gemara gets even better, and the next Gemara gets even better, as opposed to just being in the dark again and again. And these are fundamental. These are things that'll last and that build on themselves. So I think that's one really important idea. And then another thought, and I've seen this work, and these are not really my ideas. I've heard these from expert mechanchen. is ask your child where things start and end. And what I mean is you look at the Gemara, as I mentioned before, there's no inkling of where's the kasha, where's the answer, what's a raya. It's just words on a page. So there's no blueprint. The child doesn't really, there's no roadmap. The child doesn't really know where anything starts and ends. It's just looking at a bunch of kind of random words. But if you teach a child to actually compartmentalize it in their heads, where does the kasha end? What word is the last word of the kasha? What word is the first word of the answer? What word is, where does the brisa start and end? Where does the raya? Where's the raya? And essentially what you're doing is you're teaching kids to picture this invisible dialogue that's going on in the Gemara, the invisible shaka v'tarya. If they do that, again, you're training them and they pick up that skill and then they'll do it more and more. So instead of just kind of hearing, it's very hard to absorb. The Rebbe explains it, but it's very hard to absorb exactly where things start and finish in the Gemara. So they kind of need our assistance, even for adults. Even I myself don't always know exactly where the different steps of the Gemara start and finish. So kids have to be sort of taught to pick that up. And if you teach them to think that way, again, then every time they come across a piece of Gemara, instead of just being this jumbled group of words, it'll actually start to have a tzura. And they'll start to see that tzura more and more. And as I said, it'll build on itself exponentially. And one more idea that I think the yeshivas themselves can do, and maybe some do, but I know there are many out there that don't, is to actually turn it into a contest. There are brachas bees and there are spelling bees. People love a contest. Everybody, kids, adults, who doesn't? So, sure, teaching taich words every day and drilling the kids, that's really boring. But if you turn it into a contest, give them 400 or 500 or 300 of these words that appear again and again, and tell them that you're going to have a taich word bee, and there's going to be a school-wide contest, a yeshiva-wide contest, and somebody's going to win. And make it into something exciting and fun. And then again, these children now will know hundreds of Gemara words. Even the ones who lose will probably try and know hundreds of Gemara words. And now when they come across a piece of Gemara, they're not going to be driving around in the dark, smashing up the car. We have to really start a movement. We have to, I think, improve skills for our children. For little Shlomi. Okay, thanks for being here on the JewishNewsChannel.com. We will see you next time.